Imagine waking up in a body that isn't yours, in a world that no longer exists, and everyone you ever knew has been dead for 300 million years. This isn't science fiction. This is the story of Genesect, a Pokemon that should have stayed extinct. But humans decided otherwise, and what they did to this creature, what they turned it into, makes Mewtwo's creation look merciful by comparison. Because at least Mewtwo was born artificial, Genesect wasn't. It was the king of its world, the apex predator of an ancient Earth, until Team Plasma dug up its fossilized remains and decided to play God. They didn't just bring it back to life, they mutilated it. They installed a cannon onto its back, wrapped its body in cold metal, and suppressed its will. And when it finally woke up, when consciousness returned after an eternity of darkness, it looked down at itself and didn't recognize what it had become. Before we dive deeper into this nightmare, what would you do if you fell asleep as one thing and woke up as something completely different? It's a question worth thinking about as we explore one of the darkest stories in the Pokemon universe. The year was 300 million years ago, the Carboniferous period. Earth looked nothing like the world we know today. The atmosphere was thick with oxygen, 35% compared to today's 21%. This supercharged air allowed creatures to grow to sizes that would be impossible in our modern world. Giant dragonflies called Meganeura ruled the skies with wingspans stretching up to 2.5 feet across. Millipedes the size of cars crawled through dense prehistoric forests. And in this world of giants, there was Genesect. Well, not exactly Genesect. Not yet. Back then it was simply an insectoid predator, one of the most fearsome hunters of its era. The fossil record doesn't tell us its original name, doesn't preserve the sounds it made or the social bonds it formed. History only remembers it through the lens of what humans would later do to it. But we know this much. It was bug type, it was powerful, and according to the Pokédex entries that would be written millions of years later, it was feared as the strongest of hunters. Let's pause here and really understand what that means. 300 million years ago. That's not just ancient, that's incomprehensibly old. To put it in perspective, dinosaurs wouldn't appear for another 70 million years. The supercontinent Pangaea hadn't even fully formed yet. The ancestors of mammals were still primitive reptile-like creatures. And this Genesect ancestor, this unnamed predator, was at the top of its food chain. It hunted in the swampy forests of the Carboniferous, its compound eyes scanning for prey among the towering lycopod trees. It was perfectly adapted to its environment, a product of millions of years of evolution, a creature that belonged to its time and place. It had abilities we can only guess at now. The movie Genesect and The Legend Awakened shows them spinning silk-like substances from their claws, building elaborate structures. Was this an original trait or something Team Plasma added? We don't know. But think about what that implies. These weren't mindless killing machines. They were intelligent enough to construct, to plan, to organize their environment. They were social creatures. The film shows a group of 5 Genesect, led by a red Genesect, operating as a coordinated unit. This suggests their ancestors lived in colonies or packs, working together to survive in a hostile world. And they had a home. The movie is very specific about this. In the ancient past, Genesect lived in a verdant region with mountains and a large lake where Panna lotus flowers bloomed on the water's surface. These flowers are crucial to understanding the tragedy that follows. The Panna lotus existed 300 million years ago, and the Genesect that lived then formed an attachment to them. Maybe the flowers were part of their hunting grounds. Maybe they nested near them. Maybe they were simply beautiful, and even ancient predators could appreciate beauty. Whatever the reason, the Paleozoic meant home. Then something happened. The fossil record is silent on the details, but at some point, this particular Genesect died. Maybe it was old age. Maybe it was an injury from a hunt gone wrong. Maybe it was one of the mass extinction events that periodically reshaped life on Earth. The Carboniferous period ended with dramatic climate changes. The vast coal swamps that defined the era dried up. Oxygen levels began to drop. The giant insects that thrived in that high oxygen world found themselves struggling to survive. Many species went extinct entirely. Maybe this Genesect was one of them, dying as its world slowly became inhospitable. Its body was buried, sediment covered it. Millions of years of pressure and mineralization slowly replaced its organic matter with stone, creating a fossil. The Permian period came and went. The Great Dying, the worst extinction event in Earth's history, wiped out 90% of all species. The Triassic followed, then the Jurassic with its giant dinosaurs. The Cretaceous ended with an asteroid impact that triggered another mass extinction. Mammals rose to dominance. Ice ages came and went. Humans evolved, built civilizations, developed technology. And through all of this, through 300 million years of planetary change, the Genesect fossil remained buried, waiting, dormant, dead, the way it was supposed to stay. But humans don't leave well enough alone. Enter Team Plasma, the radical organization from the Unova region, with a stated goal of liberating Pokémon from human trainers. On the surface, their ideology seemed almost noble. They believed Pokémon were perfect beings that should live free from human control. Their leader, a young man known as N, genuinely believed he was doing the right thing. N had the ability to hear Pokémon voices, to understand their feelings in ways most humans couldn't. He'd been raised by Genesect, Team Plasma's true mastermind, in isolation, surrounded only by Pokémon that had been abused by humans. This carefully curated upbringing convinced N that all trainers were cruel, that all Pokémon suffered under human ownership. But Genesect had other plans. While N preached liberation, Genesect wanted domination. If everyone else released their Pokémon, only Team Plasma would have them. Only Team Plasma would have power, and to ensure that power was absolute, Genesect needed the ultimate weapon, not just a strong Pokémon, the strongest Pokémon ever. A Pokémon that had never existed in the modern world, that no trainer could counter because no one knew its weaknesses, its patterns, its capabilities. So Team Plasma dug up ancient history. Literally, they found the fossilized remains of that long-dead predator from 300 million years ago. And they brought it back to life. The P2 Laboratory, a remote facility northwest of Unova town on Route 17. From the outside, it looked like any other abandoned building, weathered and forgotten. But inside, Team Plasma scientists were conducting experiments that made even Mewtwo's creation seem tame by comparison. Because Mewtwo was cloned from Mew's DNA, Mewtwo never existed before humans made it. It was born into the world as a living weapon, never knowing anything else. It was a tragedy, yes, but a different kind of tragedy. Genesect was different. Genesect had lived. It had hunted, survived, thrived in its ancient world. It had memories, even if they were genetic, instinctual, buried deep in whatever remained of its reconstituted DNA. and Team Plasma was about to drag all of that back into a world that had moved on without it. The revival process itself is never fully explained in the games or anime. How do you take a fossil, mineralized stone that merely holds the shape of what once was living tissue and restore actual life? The technology involved must have been extraordinary. Team Plasma couldn't have done it alone. They must have built on research from other fossil revival programs. We know fossils can be revived in the Pokémon world. Trainers do it regularly at museums and research facilities. Omanite, Kabutops, Aerodactyl, Lileep, Anorith, Cranidos, Shieldon, Tirtuga, Archon. All of these ancient Pokémon have been successfully brought back from extinction. But Genesect was different. The Pokédex is very clear. Team Plasma revived it from a fossil and technologically enhanced it. These weren't separate processes, they happened together. They didn't revive the original creature and then modify it. They rebuilt it from the ground up as a weapon. The organic matter that could be salvaged from the fossil, the genetic information that could be extracted, all of it was used as a blueprint. But the creature that emerged from that laboratory wasn't the same being that died 300 million years ago. It was something new, something wrong. Picture the moment of awakening. You're Genesect. The last thing you remember is... what? Your original life? Do those memories survive fossilization and revival? Or is there just darkness, an eternity of nothing, and then suddenly consciousness slams into you like a freight train? Your eyes open, but they're not the eyes you remember. They're glowing red sensors, artificial optics that feed information to a brain that's been rewired and augmented. You try to move, but your body doesn't respond the way it should. Your limbs are heavy, plated with segmented metal. Your thorax is covered in a purple metallic exoskeleton. Your back feels wrong, weighed down by something massive and foreign. You look down at yourself and see a stranger. Your hands, your claws, they end in single sharp points now, not the complex manipulators you remember. They can still spin silk, that much remains, but even that feels different. The silk comes out thicker, harder, turning into a brownish stone-like substance almost immediately. Your legs end in large, upward curving claws, powerful but cumbersome. And on your back, impossible to ignore, is the cannon. A massive weapon grafted onto your body, its rim covering most of your form like a carapace. It's not part of you, it's been installed, mounted, attached like you're a vehicle being outfitted with equipment. You are Genesect now, the Paleozoic Pokémon. Bug and Steel type. Height 4 feet 11 inches, weight 181.9 pounds. National Pokédex, number 649. You are the last entry in the Unova Pokédex, the final creation, the omega point of Team Plasma's ambitions. And you are not what you used to be. The modifications went beyond the obvious physical changes. Team Plasma didn't just bolt a cannon onto an ancient bug and call it a day. They rebuilt the creature's entire being. Look at Genesect's typing, bug and steel. That steel typing didn't exist in the Carboniferous period. Steel is an artificial designation in the Pokémon world, associated with man-made materials, with technology, with metal. The original creature was pure bug type, or possibly bug and something else, but definitely not steel. That steel typing is Team Plasma's signature, proof of their alteration at the most fundamental level. The cannon is called Technoblast in the games, Genesect's signature move. It's a special attack with 120 base power, 100% accuracy, and it changes type depending on what drive is installed in the cannon. Shock drive makes it electric, burn drive makes it fire, Chill Drive makes it ice. Douse Drive makes it water. Without any drive, the cannon fires normal type energy. This versatility makes Genesect incredibly dangerous in battle. It can adapt to almost any opponent, switching its primary ranged attack to exploit weaknesses. But here's the horrifying part. This isn't Genesect choosing to attack. The cannon is controlled by the drive system, by technology that was installed without its consent. When Genesect fires Technoblast, it's not using a natural ability. It's operating a weapon that was grafted onto its body. The original creature never had this power, never needed it. It hunted with its natural abilities, its speed, its claws, its ancient predatory instincts. Team Plasma took that away and replaced it with something that serves human purposes, not the creature's needs. And it gets worse. Genesect can transform into what the movie calls high-speed flight configuration. It folds up its limbs, connects its head to the cannon on its back, and becomes a disc-like shape, a living spacecraft that can fly at incredible speeds. In the film, it travels into outer space, survives in the vacuum, and re-enters Earth's atmosphere without harm. This is not a natural ability. This is not how an insectoid predator from 300 million years ago would have moved. This is how a military vehicle operates. This is what you build when you want a weapon that can go anywhere, strike from any angle, escape any pursuit. Team Plasma even altered Genesect's mind. In the games, you can encounter a scientist named Dudley at P2 Laboratory. He used to work for Team Plasma on the Genesect project. He'll tell you about it if you show him a Genesect. He'll battle you, then give you drives for the cannon, and he'll reveal something crucial. N, Team Plasma's supposed leader, canceled the project. N felt that Pokemon were perfect beings, that modifying them through science would make them lose their beauty, their essential nature. N saw what they were doing to Genesect and said, "No, stop. This is wrong." But Getsis didn't stop, and more importantly, Dudley didn't stop. Dudley was angry that N denied his talent, denied his work, so he kept going. He quit Team Plasma, set up his own laboratory, and continued the modifications. He created the drive system. He enhanced the cannon. He turned Genesect into the ultimate weapon, and then apparently lost control of it. The Pokédex mentions that Genesect escaped, just escaped. No explanation of where it went, what it did, why it left. Think about that from Genesect's perspective. You wake up in a laboratory. Humans are all around you, monitoring you, testing you, speaking in a language you might not understand. You look at yourself and you're horrified by what you've become. Every instinct is screaming that something is wrong, that you need to get away from these creatures that did this to you. So you escape. You break free from whatever containment they had. Maybe you hurt someone in the process, we don't know, and you run. Or fly. You transform into that high-speed flight mode, and you blast through walls and you just go anywhere, everywhere, away from the laboratory and the humans and the nightmare of your new existence. But where do you go? Home, obviously. You want to go home. That's the phrase that defines Genesect's entire story. In the movie Genesect and the Legend Awakened, the Douse Drive Genesect, the smallest and most gentle of the Genesect army, says it over and over. I want to go home. It's not asking for much. It doesn't want to conquer the world. It doesn't want to destroy humanity. It just wants to go back to where it came from, to the mountains and the lake and the Panna lotus flowers. It wants to hunt in familiar territory, to see familiar sights, to exist in the context that makes sense for what it is. Except its home doesn't exist anymore. The verdant region with mountains and a lake has been transformed by 300 million years of geological change. The Panna lotus flowers are nearly extinct, surviving only in one place, Absentia Natural Park, and even there, they're rare. The other creatures that lived alongside Genesect's ancestors are all dead, their species lost to time and extinction events. The very atmosphere has changed. The 35% oxygen that allowed giant insects to thrive has dropped to 21%. The world Genesect remembers genetically, instinctively, in whatever dim way its reconstituted brain can recall. That world is gone, erased, dead, and nobody told it. How could they? Team Plasma scientists saw Genesect as a weapon, not a thinking feeling being with a history and a context. They didn't consider that reviving a creature from 300 million years ago might cause profound psychological distress. They didn't think about what it would mean for something to wake up in a future so distant that everything it knew has been erased by deep time. This is where Genesect's story intersects with Mewtwo's, but also diverges in crucial ways. Both are human-created Pokémon. Both are considered among the most powerful beings in existence. Both struggled with questions of identity and purpose. But Mewtwo was born into the world as Mewtwo. It never knew anything else. Its trauma came from being created as a weapon, from being seen as a tool rather than a life. Mewtwo's famous question from the first movie, "I see now that the circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant. It is what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are," represents a being coming to terms with an artificial origin, but choosing to define itself anyway. Genesect doesn't have that luxury. Genesect isn't grappling with being artificially created. It's grappling with being dead and then not dead, with having a past that it can never return to, with being fundamentally altered from what it was supposed to be. It's a different kind of horror. Mewtwo can reinvent itself because it never had a previous self. Genesect is haunted by what it used to be, by a ghost of identity that it can't quite grasp but also can't let go of. The movie Genesect and the Legend Awakened brings this trauma into sharp focus. The film opens with Mewtwo flying with a group of flying-type Pokémon, testing the limits of its power by mega-evolving and ascending into the sky. Meanwhile, the Genesect army, 5 Genesect led by a shiny red Genesect, arrives at a snowy area. The red Genesect believes this is their home. It looks right. The mountains, the terrain, something about it triggers recognition. But it's wrong. It's covered in snow. It's empty. And the Douse Drive Genesect, confused and distressed, cries out, "I want to go home." That line hits different when you understand the full context. It's not just a lost child wanting its parents. It's a being displaced in time, desperately searching for something that no longer exists. Mewtwo hears this plea. Mewtwo, another human-created Pokémon, recognizes the pain in that voice. It rushes to find them, and when it peers into the Douse Drive Genesect's mind, it learns the truth. They were resurrected from 300 million-year-old fossils by Team Plasma. They escaped, and now they're searching for their home, seeing everyone around them as enemies because they don't understand this strange new world where everything is wrong. The Genesect army ends up in New Torque City, a massive metropolis based on New York. To them, the city's skyline looks like their ancient home. The tall buildings resemble the rocky cliffs and mountains they remember. The concrete and steel structures trigger some genetic memory of vertical terrain. The Douse Drive Genesect even says happily, "I'm going home," when they first see the city. But it's a cruel illusion. The city isn't home. it's the opposite of home. It's the ultimate expression of how much the world has changed, how thoroughly time has erased their era. They end up at Pokémon Hills, a nature park in the heart of the city. And there, floating on a pond, are Pana lotus flowers. These flowers existed in their home 300 million years ago. The park's caretaker, a man named Eric, had transplanted them from Absentia Natural Park, the only place where they still grow naturally. For the Genesect, finding these flowers is overwhelming. It's the first familiar thing they've encountered in this nightmare future. So they take over the park. They drive out the native Pokemon. They build a massive nest near the Pana lotuses, trying desperately to recreate some fragment of the home they lost. But their nest is built over a power substation. The weight and structure of it threatens to cause a massive power outage that would plunge the entire city into darkness. The native Pokemon of Pokemon Hills don't understand why these strange metal creatures are attacking them and destroying their habitat. They fight back. Humans see the Genesect as invaders, as threats, as problems to be solved. And from the Genesect perspective, everyone who tries to stop them is an enemy, another obstacle between them and the home they're desperately trying to reclaim. The red Genesect becomes the de facto antagonist of the film, but calling it a villain misses the point entirely. The red Genesect isn't evil. It's not conquering the world out of malice. It's protecting its group, trying to establish a territory, operating on instincts that are 300 million years old and completely incompatible with modern civilization. When Mewtwo tries to intervene, tries to convince the red Genesect to stop hurting other Pokemon, the red Genesect refuses to listen. Why would it? Mewtwo is another stranger, another powerful being trying to control it, just like the humans at the laboratory. The red Genesect attacks Mewtwo not out of aggression, but out of a desperate need to maintain control in a world where it has no control over anything. This is where the film's climax becomes genuinely moving, despite its sometimes heavy-handed execution. The battle between Mewtwo and the red Genesect escalates until Mewtwo, in a last desperate act, grabs the red Genesect and drags it into outer space. It flies beyond the atmosphere, beyond where most living things can survive, to a place where no one else exists. And there, in the frozen silence of space, with Earth visible below them as a blue marble against the void, Mewtwo shows the red Genesect something it needs to understand. "This is the planet we both come from," Mewtwo says. "The planet on which you and I were created because there is a reason for us to be here. The inhabitants of this planet, people and Pokemon alike, live together as friends." It's a speech that could easily be saccharine, but in context it's devastating. Because what Mewtwo is really saying is, you're home. You never left. This is still Earth. It's just changed. Immeasurably, incomprehensibly changed. The red Genesect looks at the planet from space, sees its beauty, sees the scope of it, and something shifts. The aggression fades from its eyes. It reaches out and takes Mewtwo's hand. For the first time since awakening in Team Plasma's laboratory, the red Genesect accepts that this is reality. This is the world it exists in now. The past is gone. Home is here, in this changed world, with these strange creatures, in this impossible future. But acceptance comes at a cost. Both Mewtwo and the red Genesect begin to fall back toward Earth, their bodies freezing in the vacuum of space, their energy depleted. They're dying, essentially, falling from the sky as ice-covered meteors. The other Genesect realize what's happening and fly up to help. They spin webs of silk to catch their leader and this strange psychic cat that tried to stop them. Ash, the human protagonist of the film, rallies all the Pokemon to create a massive cushion of water, using psychic-type moves to hold it together, to catch the falling Mewtwo and red Genesect before they hit the ground and die. It works. They survive. The red Genesect wakes up, looks around at all these Pokemon and humans who came together to save it, and speaks for the first time without hostility. Everyone is my friend. It's character development that some critics found rushed, but again, context matters. The red Genesect isn't suddenly becoming naive. It's exhausted. It's been fighting since the moment it woke up in Team Plasma's laboratory. Fighting to understand, fighting to survive, fighting to find home. And now, finally, something has broken through the fear and confusion. These creatures don't want to hurt it, they want to help. Maybe, just maybe, it doesn't have to be at war with this new world. The resolution of the film involves Ash realizing where the Genesect can actually live. Not Pokemon Hills, which is too close to human civilization and too vital to the city's infrastructure. Not the mountains where they first searched, which are cold and barren and nothing like their memories. But Absentia Natural Park, the only place where Pana lotus flowers still grow naturally. Eric, the park caretaker, drives them all there. It's a water-filled canyon surrounded by pine forests, isolated, peaceful, with those precious familiar flowers floating on the water. The Genesect army quickly builds a nest there, and for the first time since their revival, they seem content. Not happy, maybe. How could they be happy after everything they've lost, but content? Settled. As close to home as they're ever going to get. The film ends on a relatively hopeful note, but it's worth sitting with the implications of what actually happened here. Team Plasma revived 5 creatures from 300 million years ago, mutilated them into weapons, lost control of them, and those creatures spent the entire movie trying desperately to find a place where they could exist peacefully. Hundreds of Pokemon were displaced from their habitats. A major city nearly lost power. Mewtwo and the red Genesect almost died in space. All of this chaos, all of this suffering happened because humans couldn't leave the past buried, because scientists wanted to create the ultimate weapon, because someone looked at an ancient fossil and thought, what if we brought this back and put a cannon on it? And here's the truly disturbing part. This isn't the only Genesect. The film shows 5, an entire army, but the games suggest there might be more. The Pokédex entries are written as if Genesect is a known species, not a singular entity. This Pokemon existed 300 million years ago. Team Plasma altered it and attached a cannon to its back. Not this individual Pokemon, just this Pokemon, implying the species designation. Multiple Genesect could exist. Team Plasma could have created others. Dudley, working alone after N shut down the project, might have made more than one. We don't know the full scope of what they did. We also don't know what happened to all the Genesect after Team Plasma's defeat. N shut down the P2 laboratory because he believed modifying Pokemon through science robbed them of their essential beauty, but the Genesect already existed by that point. You can't unring that bell. You can't just put them back in the ground and pretend they never lived. So where did they go? How many are out there? Are they all in places like Absentia Natural Park, trying to exist quietly away from human civilization? Or are some of them still out there, still searching, still lost in a world that makes no sense to them? The Pokédex gives us one more horrifying detail. Over 300 million years ago, it was feared as the strongest of hunters. Past tense. It was feared. By whom? By what? There were no humans 300 million years ago, so what feared it? Other Pokemon, other creatures that lived in that ancient era. The entry implies that Genesect's ancestors had a reputation, that they were known as apex predators, that other beings understood to avoid them or flee from them. And now those beings are all extinct. That entire ecosystem is gone, and Genesect exists in a world where it has no natural predators, but also no natural prey, no natural competitors, no natural anything. It's a ghost walking around in a world that has moved on. Compare this to other fossil Pokemon. Omanite and Kabutops came from the same ancient seas. Aerodactyl flew in prehistoric skies. Cranidos and Rampardos were dinosaur-like creatures from 100 million years ago. But here's the difference. Those Pokemon were revived as close to their original forms as possible. Yes, humans brought them back from extinction, but they didn't fundamentally alter them. An Omanite today looks and behaves essentially the same as an Omanite did in ancient times. They're displaced in time, yes, but they're not mutilated. They're not weaponized. They're still themselves. Genesect isn't itself anymore. Whatever it was 300 million years ago, that creature is dead. The being that woke up in Team Plasma's laboratory is something new, something that carries genetic memory of the past, but exists in a body that's been rebuilt for war. It can never know what it was supposed to be. It can never experience the world the way its ancestors did. Every moment of its existence is defined by what humans did to it. This is the true horror of Genesect's story. Not that it's powerful, not that it's dangerous, but that it's trapped. Trapped in a body it didn't choose. Trapped in a time period where it doesn't belong. Trapped by modifications that serve human purposes rather than its own needs. And most tragically, trapped by the impossibility of ever going home, because home exists only in genetic memories and fossilized remains, scattered across 300 million years of geological change. The movie has Mewtwo tell the red Genesect that they were both created for a reason, that they both belong on Earth, that they're both home. It's meant to be comforting, but it's also fundamentally untrue. Mewtwo can believe it because Mewtwo never had another home. Mewtwo was created in a laboratory and has only ever known the modern world. But Genesect had another home. Its ancestors lived for millions of years in an ecosystem that made sense for what they were. And that home was taken from them, not by Team Plasma, but by time itself, by continental drift and climate change and mass extinctions and the relentless forward march of evolution. Team Plasma didn't just revive an ancient Pokemon. They revived an ancient trauma. They pulled a being out of the fossil record, out of its proper context, and dropped it into a world it cannot possibly understand. And then they made it worse by altering it, by installing weapons and armor, by turning a predator that evolved for one purpose into a creature designed for completely different purposes. The Genesect that wakes up doesn't know if its memories are real or implanted. It doesn't know if its instincts can be trusted. It doesn't know if what it feels is authentic or just programming. Biological imperatives warped by technological modification. Think about Genesect trying to hunt in the modern world. Its prey is all wrong. The Pokemon it encounters didn't exist in its time. The environments are alien. The plants, the terrain, the very air feels different because the oxygen content is dropped by almost half. Even if Genesect wanted to live as its ancestors did, it couldn't. The niche it evolved to fill doesn't exist anymore. The food chains it was part of have been extinct for longer than mammals have existed. It's like trying to run software designed for a computer from 300 million years ago on a modern machine. The code might execute, but it's not going to work the way it was intended to work. And the cannon on its back is a constant reminder. Every time Genesect moves, it feels that weight. Every time it looks at itself, reflected in water or glass or the metal surfaces of human buildings, it sees that cannon. Every time another Pokemon or human reacts to it with fear or aggression, it's because of the cannon, because of the modifications that mark it as dangerous, as other, as something that doesn't fit. The original creature might have been feared as a hunter, but it was feared the way any apex predator is feared, with respect for its place in the ecosystem. Modern creatures fear Genesect because it looks like a weapon, because humans made it into a weapon, because its very existence screams danger in ways that have nothing to do with natural selection. The silk spinning ability is another tragic detail. In the movie, the Genesect used their silk to build a massive nest in Pokemon Hills. They worked together, coordinated, weaving this structure that's both beautiful and functional. It's one of the few moments where they seem like living creatures rather than weapons, where their behavior reflects something that might have existed in their ancient ancestors. Social insects building communal structures. But even that's been corrupted. The silk they produce is described as hardening into a brownish stone-like substance. It's not natural silk. It's been enhanced, modified, turned into a construction material that can support massive weight and resist fire. Even this seemingly innocent ability, this connection to their past, has been weaponized. They can't just be bugs building a nest. They have to be bugs building a fortress. The movie shows us 5 Genesect, the red Genesect that leads them, and 4 others carrying different drives. There's the Douse Drive Genesect that serves as the emotional core of the film. There's a Shock Drive Genesect, a Burn Drive Genesect, and a Chill Drive Genesect. They operate as a unit, following the red Genesect's commands, acting almost like a military squad. This organization might reflect ancient social structures. Many modern insects, bees, and ants especially, have complex hierarchies and division of labor. Maybe Genesect's ancestors lived similarly, with leaders and followers, with roles and responsibilities. But here's the thing, we can't know if this is natural behavior or programmed behavior. Team Plasma wanted a weapon. Did they also program Genesect to follow orders? Did they install some kind of hierarchical structure in their modified brains? When the red Genesect forces the Douse Drive Genesect to attack Ash, even though the Douse Drive Genesect doesn't want to, is that a natural pack hierarchy, or is that conditioning, programming, an artificial command structure imposed by their creators? The film never tells us. We're left to wonder if anything the Genesect do is truly their choice, or if they're puppets dancing to Team Plasma's strings, even after escaping the laboratory. The download ability that Genesect has in the games is another unsettling detail. Download is described as comparing an opponent's defense and special defense stats before raising Genesect's own attack or special attack stat, whichever will be more effective. It sounds like a tactical advantage, a smart adaptation. But think about what that actually means. Genesect is constantly analyzing threats, constantly calculating the most efficient way to destroy whatever it's facing. That's not natural predatory instinct. That's a targeting computer. That's software running in what should be an organic brain. Team Plasma installed a threat assessment system into Genesect's consciousness. It can't look at another Pokemon without its modified brain immediately calculating how best to kill it. Imagine living like that. You meet someone, and before you can even process who they are, your brain has already determined their weakest point and optimized your attack strategy. You can't turn it off. You can't choose not to analyze. It just happens automatically, a subroutine running in the background of your consciousness for the Douse Drive Genesect, the gentle one that just wants to go home. This must be torture. It doesn't want to fight. It doesn't want to hurt anyone. But its body, its modified cyborg body, is constantly preparing for combat whether it wants to or not. The steel typing that comes with the modifications introduces a whole new set of vulnerabilities and resistances. Bug and steel together create an unusual defensive profile. Genesect takes quadruple damage from fire-type moves, 4 times the normal damage. This is a crippling weakness. One strong fire attack can potentially destroy it. But here's what makes this particularly cruel. Genesect came from an era when fire-type Pokémon didn't exist in their modern form. 300 million years ago, fire was a natural phenomenon. Wildfires sweeping through forests, but not organized elemental attacks wielded by creatures specifically evolved to control flame. Modern Genesect encounters Charizards and Typhlosions and Infernapes, Pokemon that breathe fire like it's nothing, and its modified body reacts with intense vulnerability to something its ancient ancestors never had to deal with. On the flip side, Genesect resists a lot of types: grass, ice, psychic, dark, fairy, dragon, steel, bug, normal. 9 types that deal reduced damage, plus an immunity to poison. From a tactical standpoint, this makes Genesect excellent at tanking most special attacks. But from an existential standpoint, it means Genesect's body has been fundamentally rewritten at the molecular level. The way energy interacts with its cells has been changed. A psychic attack that would cripple an organic creature barely affects Genesect because of its steel components. It's not just wearing armor. The armor's part of it now, integrated into its biology so thoroughly that the distinction between machine and creature has become meaningless. Let's talk about N in more detail because his role in this story is crucial. Natural Harmonia Gropius, the young man raised in isolation by Getsis to be Team Plasma's figurehead. N genuinely believed Pokemon were suffering under human ownership. He could hear their voices, feel their emotions, understand them in ways most people couldn't. And this ability made him uniquely capable of recognizing when something was horribly wrong. When N learned about the Genesect project, when he saw what Team Plasma scientists were doing to this revived creature, he shut it down. He ordered the P2 laboratory closed. He used his authority as Team Plasma's supposed leader to stop the project dead. Think about what that says. N, who had been manipulated his entire life to believe humans were evil and Pokemon needed liberation, still recognized that what they were doing to Genesect was wrong, even with his skewed worldview, even believing that the ends justified the means. N looked at Genesect and said, "No. This crosses a line. Pokemon are perfect beings. Modifying them through science, mutilating them, turning them into weapons that destroys their essential nature, that makes them less than what they should be." N was right, of course, but his decision came too late. The Genesect already existed. You can't unmake a living being. You can shut down the laboratory, you can stop the project, you can prevent more from being created, but the ones that already exist, they're still there, still conscious, still suffering. N's mercy was hollow. He prevented future Genesect from being made, which is good, but he didn't help the existing ones. He didn't try to reverse the modifications. He didn't search for a way to give them back what Team Plasma had taken. He just closed the door and walked away, leaving them in a laboratory with scientists who resented his interference. Enter scientist Dudley. In the games, if you bring a Genesect to P2 Laboratory, you'll find Dudley there, the only person still lingering in that abandoned facility. He's described as having been part of Team Plasma, but left in resentment over N's decision to cancel the project. Think about the psychology of that. Dudley had been working on what he believed was the ultimate Pokémon, the strongest creature ever created. He'd invested time, effort, possibly years of his life into this project. And then N, this naive kid who claimed to understand Pokémon better than anyone, shut it all down, called it impure, said it robbed Pokémon of their beauty. So Dudley kept going. He couldn't let it die. His work, his talent, his vision of what Genesect could become. He apparently set up his own laboratory, continued the modifications, enhanced the cannon system, created the drives that allow Technoblast to change types. And here's the most damning part. When you meet him in the game, he doesn't express any regret. He doesn't question whether what he did was right. He just battles you with his Pokémon and then hands over 2 drives like he's proud of his work, like he's showing off. Look what I created. Look at this versatile weapon system I designed. Dudley never asks how Genesect feels about any of this. He never considers that maybe N had a point, that maybe modifying a living creature against its will to serve human purposes is fundamentally wrong, regardless of the technical achievement involved. Dudley is so focused on what he can do that he never stops to ask if he should do it. He's the dark mirror of every Pokémon researcher, the endpoint of scientific curiosity without ethical boundaries. And Genesect is his masterpiece, his crowning achievement, his proof of concept. A creature that should have stayed dead, brought back and reshaped to serve functions it was never meant to serve. The high-speed flight configuration deserves more examination because it represents the complete erasure of Genesect's original form. When it transforms, it folds up its limbs, tucks everything in, connects its head to the cannon, and becomes a disc, a flying saucer shape. This isn't how insects move. This isn't even how most Pokémon move. This is spacecraft design. This is aeronautical engineering applied to a living body. And it works. In the movie, Genesect flies fast enough to keep pace with Mewtwo, fast enough to travel into outer space, fast enough to re-enter Earth's atmosphere without burning up. But what does it feel like from the inside? You're a living creature, and suddenly you're folding yourself into an aerodynamic shape. Your limbs locked into recessed positions, your entire body rigid and streamlined. You're not flying like a bird or a bug, you're flying like a missile. Your propulsion comes from the cannon, from technology grafted onto your back. Your navigation, how do you even navigate in that form? Your eyes are tucked against the cannon. Do you see through sensors? Through some kind of heads-up display installed in your modified brain? Or do you just aim yourself in a direction and fire, trusting that the system's Team Plasma installed will keep you from crashing? The movie shows Genesect can breathe in space. It survives in the vacuum, in temperatures that would instantly freeze an organic creature, in radiation levels that would be lethal. This is not a natural ability. Nothing from the Carboniferous period had any reason to evolve space survivability. This is extensive biological modification. Team Plasma didn't just add a cannon and some armor. They rebuilt Genesect's entire internal system to function in environments that shouldn't support life. They made it more machine than creature, a cyborg in the truest sense, a fusion of organic and mechanical components so thorough that you can't separate them without killing what remains. And for what? Team Plasma never actually deployed Genesect in battle. The project was cancelled before they could use it for whatever schemes Getsis had planned. All that modification, all that suffering inflicted on this creature, and it never even served the purpose it was designed for. It just escaped. It ran away from the laboratory and the humans and tried desperately to find a place where it could exist without being a weapon. The cruelty is almost poetic. They made it into the ultimate Pokémon, the strongest hunter, the most powerful weapon they could create. And all it wants is to not be any of those things. The Pana lotus flowers carry immense symbolic weight in this story. They're described as an ancient species that existed 300 million years ago. Eric, the park ranger, managed to transplant some from Absentia Natural Park to Pokémon Hills. When the Douse Drive Genesect sees them, it reacts with childlike joy. "I like this flower," it says. "It bloomed in our home." Such a simple statement, such a devastating revelation. Out of everything in the modern world, out of all the Pokémon and humans and buildings and technology, these flowers are the only thing Genesect recognizes, the only connection to its past that still exists. Lotus flowers in general carry symbolic meaning across many cultures. They represent purity, rebirth, enlightenment. They grow in muddy water but bloom clean and beautiful. In the context of Genesect's story, the Pana Lotus represents what it was versus what it's become. The flower grows pure despite the murky water, but Genesect was pulled from the murky past and made impure. The flower achieves enlightenment through growth, but Genesect achieves only confusion and displacement. The flower is reborn each day as it blooms, but Genesect's rebirth from the fossil is a curse, not a blessing. When the Genesect army builds their nest in Pokémon Hills, they specifically build it near the Pana Lotuses. Not for tactical advantage, not because it's the best location strategically, but because those flowers mean home. They mean familiarity in an alien world. They mean something that connects to what they were before Team Plasma dug them up and remade them. And when the battle destroys those flowers, when fire spreads through the nest and the Pana Lotuses burn, the Douse Drive Genesect is devastated. It flies toward the flames, trying to prevent the fire from spreading. It's not trying to save the nest. It's trying to save the last fragment of its past, the ending of the movie, with Eric taking the Genesect army to Absentia Natural Park, where Pana Lotuses still grow naturally, is meant to be hopeful. And in a way it is. The Genesect find a place where they can live relatively peacefully, surrounded by flowers that connect them to their ancient home. But it's also a kind of quarantine. They're being moved away from human civilization, away from other Pokémon, to an isolated location where they can't cause problems. They're not integrated into the modern world. They're separated from it, contained in a nature preserve like living fossils on display, which, in a sense, is exactly what they are. Compare Genesect to Type. Null, another Pokémon created through horrific experimentation. Type. Null was specifically designed by the Ether Foundation to be a synthetic Pokémon capable of rivaling the power of legendary Pokémon. They took parts from various Pokémon species, cobbled them together into a chimera, and slapped a restrictive helmet on its head to limit its power because it was too unstable. Like Genesect, Type, Null is a victim of human ambition. Like Genesect, it was created to be a weapon, but there's a key difference. Type. Null was made from scratch. It's a chimera, yes, but it doesn't have memories of being something else. It doesn't have a past it's trying to return to. When Type, Null evolves into Silvally and breaks free from its helmet, it's discovering itself for the first time. not trying to reclaim a self that was stolen. Genesect can't evolve. It has no evolution line. It's stuck as exactly what Team Plasma made it. There's no transformation that will free it from the cannon on its back. No level up that will restore its original form. No friendship mechanic that will undo the modifications. What it is now is what it will always be. The finality of that is crushing. Every other Pokemon has the potential for change, for growth, for transformation. Genesect is locked into its current state forever. It's a dead end, evolutionarily and personally. The strongest of hunters, frozen in a form that's both too much and not enough. The movie's climax in space raises interesting questions about consciousness and identity. When Mewtwo takes the red Genesect beyond the atmosphere, when they're both freezing in the vacuum, on the verge of death, Mewtwo shows the red Genesect the earth from above, and the red Genesect changes. Its perspective shifts. It stops seeing enemies everywhere. It accepts that this planet, this changed world, is still home. But is that genuine character growth? Or is it trauma response? Is the red Genesect actually coming to terms with its situation? Or is it simply too exhausted to fight anymore? After being revived, modified, confused, hunted, attacked, and nearly killed in space? Maybe it just doesn't have the energy to be angry anymore. Maybe what looks like acceptance is actually resignation. We need to talk about the other Pokemon in this story too, because their reactions to Genesect are telling. The wild Pokemon at Pokemon Hills don't understand what Genesect is. They see these metallic insectoid creatures invading their territory, driving them from their homes, building a massive structure that threatens the entire park. So they fight back. Feraligatr, a powerful water type, leads the resistance. It attacks the red Genesect multiple times, refuses to back down even when clearly outmatched. From Feraligatr's perspective, it's defending its home from invaders. From the Genesect perspective, they're trying to establish a home in the only place that has familiar elements. Neither side is wrong, neither side is the villain. They're just creatures trying to survive in the same space, and humans created the conditions that put them in conflict. Mewtwo's involvement adds another layer. Mewtwo is also a human-created Pokemon, also struggled with questions of purpose and identity, also was intended as a weapon. The first movie showed Mewtwo's rage at its creators, its belief that it was the strongest Pokemon, and therefore had the right to dominate. But this is a different Mewtwo, a female Mewtwo, with a different personality and different experiences. This Mewtwo seems to have already worked through some of the existential questions that plagued the original. It knows it was created, it knows it's powerful, and it's chosen to use that power to protect others rather than dominate them. When Mewtwo looks at the Genesect, it sees reflections of itself. It sees creatures that didn't ask to be created, that are struggling to understand their place in the world, that are lashing out because they're confused and scared and everything is wrong. Mewtwo's empathy for the Genesect is genuine. It's not trying to stop them because they're dangerous. It's trying to help them because it understands what they're going through. When Mewtwo peers into the Douse Drive Genesect's mind and sees their history, sees them being resurrected from fossils and escaping from Team Plasma, and desperately searching for home, Mewtwo doesn't judge them. It just wants to help them find peace. But even Mewtwo can't fully understand what Genesect is experiencing. Mewtwo was created as an adult, fully formed, with incredible power from the start. It never had a past to remember. It never had a home to lose. Its trauma is about being created without consent, about being seen as a tool rather than a life. That's horrific in its own right, but it's different from Genesect's trauma. Genesect had something and lost it. Genesect remembers, or at least its body remembers, what it was supposed to be. That distinction matters. It's the difference between never having a home and having your home destroyed. Both are tragedies, but they're different kinds of pain. The Technoblast move itself is a marvel of horrible engineering. In the games, it has 120 base power, 100% accuracy, and changes type based on the held drive. That's stronger than most special attacks. That's on par with moves like Hyper Beam, but without the recharge turn that Hyper Beam requires. Genesect can fire Technoblast repeatedly, adapting to whatever opponent it faces, never running out of ammunition. The cannon doesn't need to reload. It doesn't overheat. It just keeps firing, drawing energy from what? Genesect's own life force? Some kind of internal power core that Team Plasma installed? The mechanics are never explained, but the implications are disturbing. The cannon is so integrated into Genesect's biology that it can fire indefinitely without depleting the creature's energy reserves. Each drive changes not just the attack's type, but also the color of the cannon's glow. Shock Drive turns it yellow for electric attacks. Burn Drive turns it red for fire attacks. Chill Drive turns it white for ice attacks. Douse Drive turns it blue for water attacks. No drive results in an orange glow for normal type attacks. This color coding is practical from a game design standpoint, but think about what it means for Genesect. Its weapon is visible to everyone. The glow announces what type of attack it's about to use. It can't hide what it is. It can't pretend to be a normal Pokémon. The cannon glows, and everyone knows immediately that this is a modified creature, a weapon, something that doesn't fit into natural categories. The Shock Drive, Burn Drive, Chill Drive, and Douse Drive themselves are interesting artifacts. They're described as cassettes that can be inserted into the cannon. This is video game terminology, ancient technology from the human world, applied to a creature from 300 million years ago. The drives are Team Plasma's creation, likely Dudley's work specifically. They allow Genesect to adapt tactically, switching its primary attack type depending on the situation. From a military standpoint, this versatility is invaluable. From a moral standpoint, it's another layer of control, another way humans dictated what Genesect would become. The movie shows 5 Genesect, each with a different drive except for the red Genesect, which seems to use the default normal type Technoblast. Why 5? Why those specific types? The film doesn't explain, but we can speculate. 5 is a squad number. It's enough for tactical diversity without being too large to coordinate. Each Genesect has a specific role defined by its drive. The Shock Drive for dealing with water and flying types. The Burn Drive for grass, ice, bug, and steel types. The Chill Drive for grass, ground, flying, and dragon types. The Douse Drive for fire, ground, and rock types. And the red Genesect with its normal type attack as a neutral option when type advantages don't matter. They're not a family, they're a military unit, each member optimized for different combat scenarios. But the Douse Drive Genesect breaks that pattern. It's smaller than the others, more timid, more gentle. It doesn't want to fight. It apologizes when forced to attack. It connects with Ash, with Pikachu, with the humans trying to help. It's different from its companions, and the film never explains why. Is it a manufacturing defect? Did something go wrong during its revival process? Is it simply an individual with a different personality? Proof that even extensively modified creatures retain some spark of individual identity? We don't know. What we do know is that it suffers more visibly than the others because it's conscious of its own wrongness. The other Genesect accept what they are and act accordingly, the Douse drive. Genesect knows something is wrong and can't fix it. Let's consider the broader implications of reviving extinct species. In the Pokemon world, fossil revival is commonplace. Museums and laboratories across multiple regions have the technology to take ancient fossils and restore them to life. This is treated as normal, even beneficial. Trainers can get fossil Pokemon, raise them, battle with them. Fossil Pokemon appear in the wild in some games, suggesting they've been successfully reintegrated into modern ecosystems. But Genesect shows us the dark side of this technology. What if the revival process goes wrong? What if the revived creature can't adapt to the modern world? What if humans decide to modify the revived creature for their own purposes? In our real world, we're approaching the point where de-extinction might become possible. Scientists are working on reviving woolly mammoths, passenger pigeons, potentially even dinosaurs if we can extract enough intact DNA. And the ethical debates are fierce. Just because we can bring back extinct species doesn't mean we should. Where would they live? What would they eat? How would they interact with modern ecosystems that evolved in their absence? Would they suffer in a world that's no longer suited for them? Genesect's story is a cautionary tale about de-extinction. It's a warning that revival without consideration for the revived creature's well-being is cruelty, not conservation. The game mechanics of Genesect raise additional questions. In Pokemon Black and White, Genesect is event exclusive. You can't catch it normally, you can only obtain it through special distributions, typically tied to movie releases or other promotional events. This rarity reinforces its status as something that shouldn't exist in large numbers. But when you do obtain a Genesect, you can breed it. Sort of. Genesect can breed with Ditto to produce more Genesect eggs. This is deeply disturbing when you think about it. Genesect is described as a modified fossil. It shouldn't be able to reproduce. Its biology has been so altered that natural reproduction should be impossible. But somehow, through Ditto's transformative properties, more Genesect can be created. Are these offspring also modified? Are they born with the canon already attached? Or do they come out as the original, unmodified species, only to be altered later? The games don't specify, leaving us with uncomfortable implications about the perpetuation of Team Plasma's work. Genesect's role in competitive battling is another angle worth exploring. In the games, Genesect is banned to Uber's tier, the highest power level, because it's too strong for standard competitive play. It has excellent base stats, good speed, powerful attacks, that versatile Technoblast, and the download ability that lets it optimize its offensive approach. From a purely mechanical standpoint, Genesect is an incredible Pokemon to use. It can fit multiple roles, can adapt to different team compositions, can threaten a wide variety of opponents. But every time someone uses Genesect in battle, they're validating Team Plasma's work. They're proving that yes, this modified creature is indeed a powerful weapon. They're treating it as exactly what its creators intended, a tool for winning battles. Does Genesect want a battle? The games give us no way to know. Pokemon in general are depicted as enjoying battles, as finding fulfillment in testing their strength. But Genesect was specifically designed as a weapon. When it battles, is it experiencing satisfaction, or is it just executing programming? When a trainer sends out Genesect and commands it to use Technoblast, is Genesect choosing to obey, or is it incapable of refusing? The download ability activates automatically without conscious choice. How many of Genesect's other abilities are similarly automatic, beyond its control, hard-coded into its modified brain? The comparison with Porygon is illuminating. Porygon is another artificial Pokémon created entirely through computer code and given physical form. But Porygon was designed from the start to exist as it is. It wasn't based on a natural creature. It wasn't pulled from the past and modified. Porygon is pure artificial intelligence made manifest. When Porygon acts, it's acting according to its nature, doing what it was literally built to do. There's no dissonance between what Porygon is and what it's supposed to be. Genesect has that dissonance in every moment of its existence. Every time it moves, every time it fights, every time it looks at itself, there's the awareness that this isn't what it's supposed to be. We should also consider the Genesect Army's group dynamic. The red Genesect clearly leads. The others follow its commands, even when they don't want to. When the red Genesect forces the Douse Drive Genesect to attack Ash, the Douse Drive Genesect obeys despite its clear reluctance. Is this natural pack hierarchy, or something Team Plasma installed? In nature, pack leaders maintain their position through various means: strength, age, experience, breeding rights. But these Genesect were all created around the same time. They have no shared history beyond the laboratory. So why does the red Genesect lead? Is it because it's shiny, visually different, marking it as special? Is it because Team Plasma programmed a command structure into them? Or did the red Genesect simply take charge when they escaped, and the others followed because they needed someone to follow? The red Genesect's aggression throughout the movie could be interpreted multiple ways. On one level, it's protecting its group, trying to establish a territory, operating on ancient predatory instincts. On another level, it's lashing out at a world that makes no sense, attacking because violence is the only response it knows to overwhelming confusion and displacement. On yet another level, maybe it's fulfilling its programming, acting as the weapon it was designed to be, because that's all Team Plasma left it capable of being. The movie ends with the red Genesect accepting friendship, accepting peace. But was that genuine change or just exhaustion? Did it really understand what Mewtwo was trying to show it, or did it simply give up? The fact that Genesect can survive in space opens up horrifying possibilities. If it can survive vacuum, extreme cold, radiation, and re-entry, then it's essentially indestructible by most conventional means. You can't just leave Genesect somewhere and expect the environment to eventually kill it. It could potentially survive anywhere, deep underwater, high in the atmosphere, in volcanic regions, in Arctic wastelands. This makes Genesect the ultimate invasive species. If one escaped into an area where it didn't belong, it could potentially survive and proliferate, disrupting ecosystems that evolved without any defense against a carboniferous super predator. And thanks to its ability to breed with Ditto, it could theoretically reproduce, creating a population of these modified creatures in places where they absolutely don't belong. Team Plasma's defeat at the end of Pokemon Black and White, and again at the end of Black 2 and White 2, left a lot of loose ends. Getsis was captured, N disappeared with Reshiram, or Zekrom. The organization dissolved. But what happened to all their projects? What happened to the other scientists like Dudley? What happened to any other Genesect that might have been created? The games are vague on these details, leaving players to wonder. Is there a storage facility somewhere filled with Genesect in stasis? Are there more laboratories hidden in remote locations, continuing Team Plasma's work independently? Did anyone ever tell the Genesect that the organization that created them is gone, that they're free now, whatever that means? The P2 laboratory in Black 2 and White 2 becomes a docking point for the Plasma frigate after Team Plasma's defeat. Colress, Team Plasma's scientist who focused on bringing out Pokemon's maximum potential, parks his ship there. This suggests the laboratory still has value, still has infrastructure worth using. What research materials did Colress find there? Did he examine Team Plasma's notes on Genesect? Did he consider continuing the project himself? Colress is portrayed as morally gray, more interested in scientific knowledge than in right or wrong. If he found the Genesect research compelling, would he have pursued it further? The games don't tell us, but the possibility lingers. The silk that Genesect produces is another detail worth examining. In the movie, it's shown creating massive structures very quickly. The nest in Pokemon Hills is enormous, complex, functional as both shelter and as a defensive position. The silk hardens into that brownish, stone-like substance almost immediately, providing structural integrity that normal silk wouldn't have. This is clearly enhanced beyond natural silk production. Spider silk in our world is already incredibly strong, pound for pound stronger than steel. But Genesect's silk has been modified to be even stronger, to harden faster, to serve construction purposes that natural silk spinning predators would never need. It's another example of Team Plasma taking a natural ability and weaponizing it, turning something that might have been used for creating webs or cocoons into a material for building fortresses. When the nest catches fire during the battle, the douse drive Genesect's distress is palpable. It's not just upset about losing a structure, it's upset about losing the work, the effort, the one thing they built that felt like home. The nest was their attempt to recreate their ancient dwelling, to impose familiar structure onto an alien environment. Watching it burn, watching everything they worked for literally go up in flames, is another layer of trauma on top of everything else they've endured. And the fact that the fire was partly caused by the battle, by the conflict between Mewtwo and the red Genesect, means the Genesect's own actions contributed to destroying the one thing that gave them comfort. It's Greek tragedy levels of irony. The end credits of the movie show Eric giving tours of the completed Pokemon Hills. Life has returned to normal. The native Pokemon have reclaimed their habitat. Humans and Pokemon coexist peacefully. And somewhere off-screen, the Genesect army lives in Absentia Natural Park, isolated but safe. It's a happy ending, technically. Everyone survives. The conflict is resolved. The Genesect have a place to live, but it's also a segregation. The Genesect couldn't integrate into the normal world. They had to be moved away, contained, kept separate. They exist on the margins, in a nature preserve, like exhibits that people might visit but never truly interact with. They're home, in the sense that they're on Earth in a place with Paleozoics. But they're not home in the sense of belonging, of being part of a community, of having a place in the world that makes sense for what they are. Compare this to how other powerful Pokemon are treated. Legendary Pokemon are often isolated, living in remote areas, rarely seen by humans. But that's their choice. They're not contained by humans. They're choosing to avoid human civilization. Mewtwo in the first movie explicitly rejects human society and goes off to live in isolation with the cloned Pokemon it created. That's agency. That's a conscious choice to remove itself from a world that hurt it. The Genesect army doesn't get that choice. They're moved to Absentia Natural Park by humans who decided that's where they should be. It's benevolent, yes. Eric is genuinely trying to help them. Ash is genuinely trying to find them a place where they can be happy. But it's still humans making decisions for creatures that can't fully advocate for themselves. The philosophical question at the heart of Genesect's story is this: do we have the right to bring back extinct species? And if we do bring them back, what responsibilities do we have toward them? In the Pokemon world, fossil revival is normalized. Extinct species are brought back routinely. But Genesect shows us what happens when that power is abused, when revival is done for exploitation rather than conservation. Team Plasma didn't bring back Genesect to study it, to learn about the Carboniferous period, to reintroduce genetic diversity into modern ecosystems. They brought it back to use it, to modify it, to turn it into a weapon that could help them conquer Unova. And once that's done, once the creature exists, you can't just undo it. You can't unring the bell. Genesect is alive now. It's conscious, feeling, thinking. Whatever its origins, whatever was done to it, it exists and has a right to exist. The question becomes, what kind of existence can it have? What kind of life is possible for a creature that's 300 million years displaced? Fundamentally modified, designed as a weapon, but yearning for peace. Is survival enough, or does Genesect deserve more than just a nature preserve where it won't bother anyone? Let's return to that opening question. Imagine waking up in a body that isn't yours, in a world that no longer exists, with everyone you ever knew dead for 300 million years. How do you cope with that? How do you build an identity when your past is inaccessible and your present is incomprehensible? How do you find meaning when you were brought back from extinction, not to live but to serve? These are questions Genesect has to grapple with every moment of its existence. And the tragic answers that it probably can't fully answer them. It's not built to philosophize about its condition. It's built to hunt, to fight, to survive. The modifications Team Plasma made ensured it could do those things incredibly well, but they didn't equip it to handle existential displacement. The download ability starts looking less like a tactical advantage and more like a survival mechanism. Genesect is constantly analyzing threats because it's constantly threatened. It's constantly preparing for combat, because combat is the only context where it has any confidence. Team Plasma designed it to be the strongest hunter, but they didn't design it to be happy. They didn't design it to find fulfillment. They didn't even design it to be comfortable. They designed it to win battles. Everything else about its existence is an unintended consequence of being created for a purpose and then denied that purpose when the project was cancelled. The relationship between the 5 Genesect in the army is one of the few bright spots in this otherwise dark story. They have each other. They're not alone. The red Genesect leads, yes, sometimes harshly, sometimes forcing the others to do things they don't want to do. But it's also protecting them. When the Pokemon Hills residents start fighting back, when the Genesect are outnumbered and overwhelmed, the red Genesect returns to defend them. It takes hits meant for them. It stands between them and danger. That's not programming. That's loyalty. That's care. Whatever else Team Plasma took from these creatures, they didn't completely destroy their capacity for social bonds. The Douse Drive Genesect saving Ash from the other Genesect's attack is the moment that crystallizes this. It doesn't have to do that. Ash is just a human, one of the species that created it, that modified it, that's responsible for everything wrong in its life. But the Douse Drive Genesect has connected with Ash. Ash showed it kindness, made a promise to help it get home, treated it like a Pokemon rather than a weapon. So when that attack comes, when its companions are about to kill this human, the Douse Drive Genesect throws itself in the way. It takes the Technoblast meant for Ash, and it collapses, potentially dying, to protect someone it barely knows. That's heroism. That's selflessness. That's proof that underneath all the modifications, underneath the canon and the metal and the programming, there's still a creature capable of choosing compassion over obedience. Which brings us full circle to the movie's central message. Everyone deserves a place to belong. Mewtwo tells the Red Genesect that they both exist for a reason, that they both have a right to be here. And it's true, but it's also incomplete. Existing is one thing, belonging is another. Genesect exists. It's alive. It's conscious. It has as much right to life as any other Pokemon. But does it belong? Can it belong? Or is it forever a thing out of time, a fossil given flesh, a weapon that wants to be something else but doesn't know how? The tragedy of Genesect is that it's alone in a way few other Pokemon are. Even other unique Pokemon, even other legendary and mythical Pokemon have context. They have roles in their ecosystems, relationships with other species, myths and legends that give them meaning. Genesect has none of that. Its myths are 300 million years old. Its ecosystem is extinct. Its relationships are with other modified creatures, just as displaced as it is. It's not the last of its kind because it never was part of a kind. The original species died out eons ago. What Team Plasma created is something new, something that never existed naturally, something that has no place in the natural order. If you've made it this far into the story, you've heard about one of the darkest chapters in the Pokemon universe. A chapter that doesn't get talked about enough. We discuss Mewtwo's suffering. We talk about how Type, Null, was created as a chimera. We acknowledge that the Ether Foundation's experiments were horrific. But Genesect's story is arguably worse because it adds temporal displacement to the mix. It's not just about being created as a weapon. It's about being ripped from your proper time, modified against your will, and then abandoned in a world where you fundamentally don't fit. If you found this exploration of Genesect's tragedy compelling, let me know in the comments what other dark Pokemon lore you'd like me to cover. There are so many stories in this universe that deserve deeper examination, so many implications that the games and anime hint at, but never fully explore. And if this video gave you a new perspective on one of Pokemon's most tragic creatures, a like would mean a lot. This type of deep dive content takes significant research and thought, and your support helps me continue making it. If you're interested in more analyses of Pokemon lore that goes beyond the surface level, consider subscribing. There's always more to uncover in this universe, more stories that deserve to be told from perspectives we don't usually consider. Genesect wanted to go home, that's all. Just to go home. And because humans couldn't leave the past buried, because scientists wanted to play God, because someone thought extinction was a problem to be solved rather than a natural process to be respected, Genesect will never have a home. It has Absentia Natural Park, yes. It has Pana Lotuses. It has its companions. But it doesn't have what it lost 300 million years ago. It doesn't have the world it belonged to. And it never will. That's the true horror of the cyborg. Not the modifications, not the canon, not the metal body. The horror is the knowledge that no matter where it goes, no matter how long it lives, it will always be a stranger in a strange land, a ghost walking around in a world that has moved on without it. Team Plasma didn't just create a weapon, They created a tragedy, and that tragedy is still alive, still conscious, still searching for something it will never find. Additional content. Genesect extended analysis. There's more to unpack about what it means to be classified as the Paleozoic Pokémon. That designation isn't just flavor text, it's a temporal marker, a label that defines Genesect not by what it is, but by when it's from. The Paleozoic era lasted from about 541 million years ago to 252 million years ago. It included the Cambrian explosion of life, the colonization of land by plants and animals, the rise of the first forests, and ended with the Permian-Triassic extinction event that wiped out 96% of all marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrates. Genesect comes from near the end of this era, from the Carboniferous period specifically, which means it witnessed or was part of one of the most biodiverse periods in Earth's history. Being called the Paleozoic Pokémon is like being called the human from the Stone Age, except the time gap is millions of times larger. It reduces Genesect's entire existence to its temporal origin. It doesn't matter what Genesect does now, what choices it makes, what relationships it forms. It will always be the Paleozoic Pokémon, the creature from the ancient past, the fossil that walks. That label follows it everywhere. When other Pokémon look at Genesect, when trainers encounter it, when professors study it, they're always seeing it through that lens. It's not just a bug steel type. It's not just a powerful Pokémon. It's the living fossil, the resurrected relic, the creature that doesn't belong to this time. Genesect is the last Pokémon in the Unova Pokédex, the final entry, the Omega Point. Being number 649 means Genesect was discovered or cataloged after 648 other Pokémon species. It's a late addition to human knowledge, which makes sense given that it was created by Team Plasma in secret. But it also means that when Genesect looks at the Pokédex, when it sees its entry, it's confronted with the fact that it's been classified, categorized, filed away like a specimen in a museum. Its entire being reduced to a few lines of text: height, weight, type, category, ability, and a brief description that focuses entirely on what Team Plasma did to it. The Pokédex entries across different games are revealing in what they emphasize. Black and White say, this Pokémon existed 300 million years ago. Team Plasma altered it and attached a cannon to its back. Black 2 and White 2 add, this ancient bug Pokémon was altered by Team Plasma. They upgraded the cannon on its back. X and Y repeat the Black and White entry. Sun and Moon repeated again. Sword and Shield, the same. Every single entry focuses on two things: how old Genesect is, and what Team Plasma did to it. Not what Genesect can do naturally, not its behavior in the wild, not its role in any ecosystem, just age and modification. That's all Genesect is to the scientific community, apparently. An ancient creature that was altered. The moves Genesect can learn tell us something about both its original nature and its modifications. Lock On is a targeting move that ensures the next attack hits, clearly tied to the targeting systems Team Plasma installed. Genesect's brain has been wired to lock onto targets with perfect accuracy. It can learn self-destruct and explosion, which is horrifying to consider. Did Team Plasma install self-destruct mechanisms in Genesect? Can it blow itself up if captured, or if its mission fails? Sleep Talk is another move Genesect can learn, and this one's quietly horrifying. Sleep Talk lets a Pokémon use moves while asleep. For Genesect, it suggests that even when unconscious, even when its conscious mind is shut down, the weapon systems remain active. It can fire Technoblast in its sleep. The modifications run so deep that they function even when Genesect itself isn't aware. What kind of nightmares does Genesect have? Does it dream of its ancient home? Does it dream of the laboratory? Does it wake up to find it's been firing its cannon at nothing, reflexively defending itself against dream threats? The download ability is listed as Genesect's only ability in most games, but this is significant. Most Pokemon have multiple possible abilities, offering some variety in how they function. Genesect has only download. It has no alternative. Its function is locked in. Analyze the opponent, determine their weaker defensive stat, raise your offensive stat to exploit it. This isn't player choice. This isn't adaptation. This is programming. Genesect does this automatically because it was designed to do this. It's like having a computer chip in your brain that constantly runs a combat subroutine without asking permission. In later games, Genesect can have download switched out through ability patches or abilities like skill swap or roleplay, but its default state is always download, always analyzing, always optimizing for destruction. Even if a trainer wanted to use Genesect non-violently, wanted to have it as a companion rather than a fighter, that ability is still there, still active, still computing how best to destroy whatever's in front of it. Imagine trying to make friends when your brain is constantly calculating which of their stats is weaker and how you could best exploit that weakness. It would be exhausting, alienating. It would make genuine connection nearly impossible because you're always in combat mode, even when there's no combat. The shiny form of Genesect is the red Genesect that leads the army in the movie. Shiny Pokemon are already rare, already special, already marked as different, but a shiny Genesect is even more unusual because there's presumably only one, or at most a handful. The red Genesect in the movie is distinguished not just by its color but by its leadership role, its aggression, its unwillingness to accept the situation. Is the red coloring natural variation in the fossil revival process? Did Team Plasma deliberately create one as a leader unit, marked visually so the others would recognize its authority? Or is it simply random chance, a shiny mutation that happened to occur during the modification process? The film doesn't explain, but the red Genesect's prominence suggests its color means something, represents something beyond just aesthetic variation. Let's consider what other Team Plasma members thought about the Genesect project. We know N shut it down. We know Getsis presumably authorized it initially. We know Dudley continued it after N's cancellation. But what about the Seven Sages? What about the Grunts who followed Team Plasma's ideology of liberating Pokemon? How did they reconcile their stated beliefs with the existence of a Pokemon that was literally created through human modification? Did any of them object? Did any of them see the hypocrisy in claiming to liberate Pokemon while simultaneously creating the most enslaved Pokemon imaginable? The cognitive dissonance must have been overwhelming for true believers in Team Plasma's cause. They were supposed to be freeing Pokemon from human control, but they created Genesect specifically to be controlled. They were supposed to believe Pokemon were perfect beings, but they modified Genesect because they thought it needed improvement. They were supposed to oppose trainers who forced Pokemon to battle, but they designed Genesect as a living weapon with no purpose except battle. Either these contradictions destroyed their faith in the organization, or they engaged in mental gymnastics impressive enough to ignore them. Neither option reflects well on Team Plasma as a whole. There's a deleted scene or cut content from the movie. I'm speculating here, but follow the logic. where we might have seen more of Team Plasma's control over the Genesect army. The film shows them briefly at the beginning, Team Plasma grunts overseeing the awakening of the newly revived Genesect, but they only had control for a short time before the Genesect rebelled and escaped. What happened in that short time? Did Team Plasma try to train them? Did they run tests? Did they attempt to establish control through conditioning or through technological means? The fact that the Genesect escaped suggests they couldn't be fully controlled, that some spark of independent will remained despite all the modifications. But that escape must have been traumatic in its own right, probably involved violence, probably hurt both Team Plasma members and the Genesect themselves. The anime series Black and White had a special episode serving as a prologue to the movie. Mewtwo, Prologue to Awakening, focused on Mewtwo's perspective, showing its journey and establishing its character before the main film. But there's no prologue from Genesect's perspective. We don't see its awakening in the laboratory. We don't see its escape. We don't see its desperate search for home before the events of the movie. The film starts with the Genesect army already free, already searching, already traumatized. We're denied their origin story, their perspective on what was done to them. This is narratively efficient, but thematically significant. Genesect remains somewhat mysterious, somewhat unknowable, because we never see the full extent of what it went through. We only see the aftermath. Think about the moment of Genesect's first awakening, which we don't see in the film but can imagine. You're dead. You've been dead for 300 million years. And then suddenly you're not dead anymore. You're conscious. You're aware. You're in pain because your body is wrong, heavier, different, metal, where there shouldn't be metal. You try to move and servos whir, mechanical components responding to neural commands. You try to see and your vision is overlaid with targeting data, environmental analysis, threat assessment protocols. You try to remember who you are, and your memories, if they exist at all, are fragmented, contradictory, possibly not even real. And there are humans everywhere, speaking in a language you don't understand, looking at you like you're a thing they made, a product they can be proud of. What's your first thought? Is it confusion, terror, rage? Or is it just pure survival instinct? The need to escape, to get away from this place and these creatures in this situation that makes no sense. The Genesect escaped, which suggests that fight or flight response was strong enough to override whatever control mechanisms Team Plasma tried to implement. But that escape came at a cost. They left the only place where anyone knew what they were, where anyone could potentially help them understand what had been done to them. They fled into a world that had no context for their existence, no framework for understanding what they needed. They chose freedom over comprehension, which is simultaneously brave and tragic. The P2 laboratory itself deserves more attention. It's described as being northwest of New Vema town on Route 17, in a remote location. The name P2 suggests there might have been a P1 laboratory, or that this was phase 2 of a larger project. What was phase 1? Was it the initial revival of fossils without modification? Was it testing the modification technology on other Pokémon before applying it to Genesect? The games never tell us. We only know that P2 laboratory exists, that it was used for the Genesect project, that N shut it down, and that it became a location where players could encounter remnants of Team Plasma's work. The laboratory in the games is mostly empty, a few machines still running, evidence of past research, but no active projects. When you bring Genesect there, Dudley appears, the last scientist still connected to the project. He battles you, not to protect secrets or continue Team Plasma's work, but seemingly just because he wants to battle. He wants to see his creation in action. He wants validation that the work he did produced results. And after you defeat him, he just hands over the drives, these technological marvels that he created to enhance Genesect's capabilities, like their party favors. Here, have some weapons for your weapon. There's no sense of responsibility, no acknowledgement that maybe creating interchangeable weapon modules for a cyborg Pokémon was ethically problematic. Compare Genesect to Silvally, and the comparison is instructive. Silvally was type Null, a chimera created by the Ether Foundation to fight Ultra Beasts. It was made by combining parts of multiple Pokémon into one body, creating something that didn't exist naturally. It wore a restrictive helmet to limit its power because it was too unstable without it. But when type, Null forms a strong bond with its trainer, when it's shown genuine care and affection, it evolves into Silvally. The helmet breaks, the creature is free, it gains the ability to change its type at will using memory disks, becoming truly versatile, truly powerful. And this evolution is framed as positive, as growth, as the creature finally achieving its true potential. Genesect has no such evolution. No amount of friendship will free it from its canon. No amount of care will restore its original form. It's stuck permanently as what Team Plasma made it. Silvally's story has hope. Even a creature made through horrible experimentation can find happiness and transcend its origins. Genesect's story has no such hope. It is what it is, forever. The best it can hope for is acceptance, not transformation. That's a crucial difference. Silvally can change. Genesect cannot. One suggests redemption is possible even for artificial creatures. The other suggests some modifications are too thorough to ever undo. The relationship between Genesect and Ditto is worth examining from a breeding perspective. Ditto is known as the transformed Pokémon, capable of perfectly copying any Pokémon it sees. When Genesect breeds with Ditto, what exactly is being copied? Is Ditto transforming into the original, unmodified Genesect ancestor? Or is it transforming into the modified cyborg version? If the offspring Genesect that results is also modified, that implies the modifications have become hereditary, part of Genesect's genetic code now. Team Plasma didn't just alter one creature, they altered the species itself, permanently, making the modifications self-replicating. That's arguably worse than creating a single cyborg. That's creating a lineage of cyborgs, potentially forever. The download ability becomes even more sinister when you consider it in social situations. Genesect is at a party, just a social gathering of Pokemon, no battles, no threats. And its download ability is still active, still analyzing every Pokemon it meets, still calculating their weaker defensive stat. Hello, nice to meet you. Your special defense is lower than your defense, so I should use special attacks if I need to destroy you. That's not conducive to friendship. That's not how you build a community. That's how you maintain constant vigilance in a world you perceive as hostile. And maybe Genesect is right to perceive it that way. Maybe after everything that's been done to it, maintaining that vigilance is the only way it knows how to survive. Let's talk about what happens when a trainer catches Genesect. In the games, if you obtain Genesect through an event, you can use it in battle. You can command it. It obeys you, at least mechanically. But what's that relationship like from Genesect's perspective? This trainer didn't create it. This trainer didn't modify it. This trainer is just a human who happens to have a Pokeball containing it. Does Genesect resent being caught? Does it appreciate having direction, purpose, someone to follow? Or is it simply numb to the concept of freedom versus captivity because it's never truly been free? Team Plasma controlled it, then it escaped, then possibly another human caught it. It traded one form of servitude for another without ever experiencing autonomy. The move U-turn takes on symbolic meaning with Genesect. U-turn is a bug-type move where the user attacks and then switches out to another Pokemon. For Genesect, using U-turn is briefly experiencing freedom from battle before being pulled back in. It attacks, and then it's gone, returned to its Pokeball, replaced by another Pokemon. That moment of escape, of being removed from the immediate danger and conflict, must be relief. But it's temporary. The trainer will send it back out eventually, back into battle, back into the role of weapon. U-turn is a perfect metaphor for Genesect's existence. Brief escapes from its purpose that never last, always leading back to combat. The movie's resolution, with the Genesect army finding peace in Absentia Natural Park, is meant to be hopeful, and on the surface it is. They're safe, they're together, they have Pana Lotuses, they're not being hunted or attacked or forced to fight, but it's also a form of exile. They're separated from the rest of Pokemon society, isolated in a nature preserve, effectively quarantined because they couldn't integrate into the normal world. Is that peace, or is that just giving up? Is that acceptance, or is that defeat? The movie frames it positively, but you could also see it as Genesect being relegated to a reservation, kept away from civilization because civilization couldn't handle them. And what happens next? The movie ends, the credits roll, but life continues for the Genesect army. Do they stay in Absentia Natural Park forever? Do they ever try to leave, to explore more of this modern world? Does anyone visit them? Does anyone check on them? Or are they just forgotten? 5 cyborg Pokemon living quietly in isolation while the world moves on without them? The games and anime don't follow up in their story. The movie is self-contained. So we're left to imagine their future. And it's not hard to imagine a future where they're lonely, where they're bored, where they're trapped in a different way than they were trapped in Team Plasma's laboratory. This is the ultimate tragedy of Genesect. There is no good ending. There's no resolution that makes everything okay. Even the happiest possible outcome, living peacefully in a nature preserve surrounded by familiar flowers, is still fundamentally compromised by the fact that they don't belong to this time period. They've been irrevocably modified, and they can never go back to what they were. Team Plasma created a problem that cannot be solved, only managed, and Genesect has to live with that forever, knowing that no matter how much time passes, no matter how much they adapt, they will always be strangers in a world that isn't theirs.